Before we get into it, I'd like to present myself so you know a bit more about me. I've been working for the past 7 years in influencer marketing. I started at Upfluence in influencer marketing software, where I was basically managing the campaigns for loads of different clients in different industries. After that, I decided to move over to the client side, let's say, and I specialized in mobile gaming. I worked at Social Point, where I basically led the influencer marketing department, so building and executing the influencer marketing strategy for their different titles. I then moved over to another mobile gaming studio, where I built from scratch the influencer marketing department. And earlier this year, I decided to launch my own business in consultancy, just because I wanted to diversify the apps and projects on which I worked. And so I'm also working at Wuga, which is basically my main client. I'm leading the influencer marketing department and helping them take the influencer marketing efforts to the next level. Since I've been working in mobile gaming, I've invested over $8 million, generated 370 million views, acquired over 4 million new and returning users for a 39% ROI day 7 and a 141% forecasted ROI. So this includes both the organic and the track traffic. And as you can see from the figures, I'm really data-driven and really towards performance and really in measuring the performance and optimizing the campaign. So now let's go into the topic of this presentation. How do we turn influencer marketing into a cornerstone of your marketing mix? So where to start? Like any other user acquisition channel, it all starts with the target audience, right? Who you want to target in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of location, and in terms of interests. And once you know that, you're going to be able to understand which influencers you need to work with in terms of social media platforms, but also in terms of verticals of influencers. So let's say fashion, gaming, lifestyle, etc. So now that we know where to start, let's have a look at the different social medias that are available out there. So I try to make a little ranking. This is my perspective. Some other people might have different opinions. But so because I'm doing performance-driven influencer marketing, we need to get some track traffic to understand the value of the users that we are getting. And in order to get that track traffic, we need obviously to have a tracking link. So in third position, I would put Instagram. On Instagram, for posts and for reels, well, the only placement for which we can have a link is in the bio of the influencer. Obviously, it's not a great user journey because, like, they see a post, influencers tell them to click the link in their bio. They not necessarily go to click the link on that bio. On top of that, and more recently, influencers are using what we call beacons or link trees, which are basically a link because they can only put one link in their bio. And so with one link, they can redirect you to several links. And so in the end, your tracking link will be drowned with the other ones. And so you're not going to get as much traffic as you'd hope for. The second format on Instagram are stories. Stories are great because in the end you have a link that is directly in the story with the swipe up feature or even the link. The issue with stories, in my opinion, is that, first of all, the data in terms of story views is not available to everyone. So you need to ask the influencers to send you a screenshot, which is obviously very time consuming. And on top of that, and from my experience, sponsored stories tend to perform drastically less than organic stories. A few months back, I launched a campaign with $150,000. We worked with 41 influencers, and on average, they under-delivered by 80% in terms of views. So in the end, CPM was crazy high, and performance was terrible. So that's why it's in third position. In second place, and actually there's 2 social media platforms that I've put there, are Twitch and TikTok. Obviously, it depends on your audience demographic and the one that you want to target. On TikTok, pretty similar user journey as in Instagram. The only place you can put a link is in the bio of the influencer, not ideal. But you can find maybe other ways to try to track that traffic. So for example, if you have a gift code that the influencer can mention orally or may even put on screen in their content, that can also help you track back that traffic to your campaign. Then you've got Twitch. Twitch is expensive and is not suited for all types of audiences, but usually the audience the quality of the audience tends to compensate with a high price if this is the audience that you need to target. And on top of that, with added sort of add-ons in the stream. You can have, for example, animation every time a user downloads your app, which can also be an incentive for them to download and make it more interesting and yeah, increase the performance. And then in first place, and actually by far in my opinion, is YouTube. YouTube, because in the end, you have a link that is directly in the description of the video, so right below the content. Whether you are sponsoring the entire video or only a part of it, you'll have that link. And in my opinion, this is the most cost-effective way to do performance-driven influencer marketing. So now that we know, from at least my opinion, which social media is the best, let's have a look at the different phases, right? So like any other user acquisition channel, you're going to start with a learning phase, or knowledge gathering, where you launch several campaigns. You try different verticals of influencers, so different, in YouTube, for example, lifestyle, gaming, etc., to try to understand what performs for your game. You gather some data, and then you move on to the optimization phase, where you know which verticals tend to perform. You can optimize your campaigns. I'll go through that in a second. And then hopefully you get to the point where you have ROI positive campaigns, and then you can just move on to the scaling up phase, where you just spend more and hopefully maintain performance. Once you've done that with one social media, obviously start again with the other ones. So knowledge gathering and then optimization phase with the different ones that you think might be a good fit for your app or your game. Now let's have a look at the campaign testing framework. So this is basically something I came up with while I was building the influencer marketing strategy for several games, but it also applies to any kind of app. And so basically, you start working with nano and micro influencers. So influencers that are generating less than 50,000 views per video on average. Why do we work with smaller creators? Because obviously they're less expensive. It allows you to work with many more of them, and that you gather more data on each of those verticals. So let's take, for example, you have a cooking app, right? Cooking app, cooking game, and you want to target female 25 plus. Obviously, you're going to be working with cooking creators, but not only, right? Because your audience might also be interested in some other things besides just cooking. So you should be listing the different verticals of influencers that you think can be a good fit. So let's say, for example, family, true crime, gaming, cooking, obviously, wellness, ASMR, beauty, entertainment, and lifestyle, which all have can have a female 25 plus audience. So you launch a campaign with those micro influencers. You gather some data, and unfortunately, because this is the first campaign, most likely results are not going to be satisfying. So you iterate, right? You can iterate on different things. On the audience demographic, maybe you realize that the influencers that did perform had an older audience than the one that did not perform. Or maybe the share of female audience was higher for certain influencers. So iterate on that, trying to understand, okay, what's the sweet spot and what's the audience that do convert for your app. You can also iterate on the sub-verticals, because some of those verticals are very wide. I'm taking the example of gaming, for example. In gaming, you have loads of different games that can be played. It goes from Fortnite to Animal Crossing to right? And so all of them might not perform the same way. And so you need to have some granularity in your analysis to be able to understand what performs. You can also iterate on the visual messaging, because in the end, maybe the content that performs best is the content where the influencer actually recorded their own their app on their own and show it to their audience, because it seems really genuine. But at the same time, maybe in gaming, it might not work best, because in the end, they might download the game, be level 1, showcase the first-time user experience, and it might not be the most appealing gameplay. So you might want to provide them some footage. So that's something that you also need to pay attention to. And then obviously the motivators. How does the influencer present the app or the game? What motivators do they emphasize on? Are those the right ones for their audience? And so basically you iterate on all of this, and maybe at some point, after running a few campaigns, you realize that some verticals do not perform for your app. You've worked with, 10 influencers in each of those verticals. None of them were ROI positive, so that's why you should just put them on the side and stop working with those. And then you work with the other ones, you get to satisfying results, and so that's when you actually move to mid-size to macro influencers. YouTubers that are making between 50,000 to 1 million views. And you basically do the same. You work with the same verticals. You launch your campaigns. maybe you don't get to satisfying results, and that's when you iterate again. So maybe you iterate, you realize that in your game, for example, you have certain live ops that are increasing monetization for the new users. So then you plan your campaigns accordingly to make sure that you can take advantage of that. You keep iterating on the sub-verticals because this is a big topic, and so you need some data to be able to understand exactly what performs. And maybe you can also implement some gift codes of gift links that will improve the campaign performance, and I'll give an example in a second. But you keep iterating up until the point that you get to satisfying results, and then you move on to those mega influencers. You work with the same verticals, you launch your campaigns, maybe the first few ones are not ROI positive, so you iterate. Again, gift load, gift code, gift links are ideal because they're gonna increase the conversion rate. And again, I'm going to show you an example in a second. And also something that I really like are personalized in-app content. And I'm going to show, again, an example in a second. But this will help you improve the performance of your campaigns up until the point that you get to satisfying results. And that means that you can work with each sizes of influencers profitably. And this is very important because in the end, when you look at the YouTube ecosystem breakdown, you realize that in terms of numbers of channels available out there, 92% are micro-influencers, which makes sense because they're very small channels and anyone can be an influencer nowadays. So that means that mid-size to mega influencers represent only 8% of those numbers of channels. But when you put that in perspective with the numbers of views, you actually realize that those micro-influencers only represent 30% of the views that are made on YouTube, and 63% made by the mid-size to mega influencers, which means that you really need to be able to work with all sizes of influencers, because you want to make sure that you never run out of influencers to work with, but you also want to make sure that you'll be able to invest all your budget and make use of those millions of views available. So now let's have a look at how do we increase your campaign performance. So there's three things that I've listed. First one, as I mentioned before, gift codes and gift links. Those are ideal because it's going to be an added incentive for people to download your app or your game. I would tend to recommend translating the value of that gift into a currency that everyone knows, because in the end, I'm taking the example of gaming, but it can be the same in other types of apps. But you give them some gems or diamonds or whatever, but people don't know what that means and don't know how much it is worth. So convert that into dollars. You tell them it's $20. People will be more inclined to actually download your game. So it can increase conversion rate, and it can also increase retention, because in the end, it will have free content that they will want to enjoy, and that will engage them with your app or your game. Let me show you an example from a simulation game of a few campaigns that I've run with gift codes, or gift links actually. So I wanted to have a campaign for which I would use as a benchmark, so no gifts. We worked with 16 influencers, had 1.7 million views, conversion rate really, really low of 0.13%. LTV of the average from the game, and ROI that was very bad of 39%. For the second campaign, we implemented two types of gift: characters and a beginner pack. So this beginner pack was basically a few gems and some in-game currencies to help the users start the game in a better way, let's say. So we worked with 12 influencers. As you can see, the budget is much smaller, because also when the first campaign was not profitable, it was difficult to negotiate a same budget. But as you can see, conversion rate increased tremendously, which was great, which allowed us to reach profitability with 135%, but our LTV went down tremendously. And when looking at the performance in detail, I realized that all the channels that had a very poor LTV were the channels with a beginner pack, meaning that this beginner pack, where we offered them gems and coins and stuff like that, impacted negatively the monetization, because in the end we were giving that for free, so people didn't have to buy it. So the third campaign, we actually decided to only give out characters. And as you can see, ROI was crazy high. We maintained a good conversion rate, and we had a really good LTV as well. And so that's what we started doing, and then we started testing different sort of characters to try to find the ones that would perform best, and also adapting them to the different channels that we were working with. Let's try to have a look at, for example, more feminine characters for more feminine audience, more male character for more male audience, and stuff like that, in order to keep optimizing and try to get to the best performance. Second way that you can increase your campaign performance are through giveaways and contests. So obviously this will be an added incentive for people to download your app or your game, and it will increase conversion rate. What I would tend to recommend is to have the giveaway, well, the prize to be related to the influencer, because it tends to be the best motivators for them. Something like merch from the influencer tends to work really well, but if that's not an option, you can also obviously offer iPhones and stuff like that, which tend to perform also really well. You can also increase the engagement, because, for example, in gaming, if you ask the influencers to the audience to reach level X to enter the giveaway, then people will play the game and they will have a higher engagement. You can also increase monetization, because if you say that you will reward the top 3 players with the highest rank or highest score within that certain time frame, it will incentivize people to actually play, but not only play, but try to reach that top score, and so maybe actually spend in the game. And then the third option are those custom in-app integrations. So it's basically integrating the influencer directly in your app or your game. It can be done in many different ways, as a character, as a decoration, as a skin, as just an influencer that goes through the first-time user experience. And this has the best performance, in my opinion. I'm going to show you an example afterward, but obviously it will increase the conversion rate, because anything related to the influencer, the audience will want to collect. It will increase the engagement, because if they do collect that item, they will keep using the app. It can also increase the monetization if that content is something that you sell in your app. And it will also increase the retention, because the audience will be more engaged and will want to take advantage of the content that they've newly acquired. So let me show you a full user experience around one influencer. So this is Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is the biggest influencer out there. He's averaging 40 to 60 million views. I worked with him a few years back, so it wasn't as big, but it was still the biggest. We had worked with him previously, so that's one of the optimized campaigns that we ran with him. But basically, we created an in-game character for his audience to collect. This was presented in a 60-second integration in one of his videos. So he presented the game, he presented the fact that he partnered with us, and that we had created a custom character based on his logo. So because we knew that he would be driving millions of views, we actually decided to update the app icon, so then people would see the video, they would find the game on the App Store, and they would see the icon being on the colors of the influencer, and so that would be also an added incentive for them to actually download the game. So the experience would start even before downloading the game. They would play through the first-time user experience. They would then see in-game news that would explain the event, where to collect those characters, what to do to enter the giveaway, what sort of prize could they get. They would then get a pop-up offer to present them the previous actually character that we created for the influencer, so they could purchase it. And they would also have the opportunity to get those characters by playing the game and playing certain events in the game. Something to really keep in mind is that in this scenario, we're trying to acquire new users, right? So all the content that is related to the influencer should be available as soon as possible in your game or your app, to make sure that people see the content that they are here for as soon as possible. And on top of that, it is usually best to offer a way to get the content for free and a way to get it by paying in a much faster way, because we don't want any sort of backlash, and we don't want to compromise the relationship that we have with the influencer if the audience complains that they have to spend $10 to get whatever item. So let me show you some numbers, right? So this is an example from a mobile game where we created several characters for different influencers. So as you can see, all the influencers, those are individual influencers that are generating more than 1 million views each. For the influencers that, for which we created a character, we can see that on average, the click-through rate was 500% higher, and that the ROI was actually 350% higher on average. So that clearly shows the power of those in-game integrations or in-app integrations. It does require some support from the product team, from the art team, which can be tough to convince. I've had the experience myself, especially when you don't have any numbers at the beginning. But you can start small. You can try to do like a little item that you just repurpose or that you rename, show that it has an impact on the performance, and then negotiate to have more resources, because it does really perform, and that's something that we were doing basically on a monthly basis. Before we wrap it up, I just wanted to share a few additional benefits of doing influencer marketing. You'll have, if you purchase the right, you have UA creatives that you can use in your UA campaigns. I don't know if that's something you've tested before, but most of the time, UA creatives that are showcasing influencers perform better because they are adapted to the format and the codes of the platform. And so it is definitely an added benefit. App Store ranking, when launching your campaigns in certain countries, maybe smaller countries, for example, than the US, and you drive a lot of organic traffic into the store, that can help you go up the rankings. And if you reach in certain categories, even the top 3, that will give you additional visibility, which will give you obviously additional installs. And then finally, for user acquisition, when you're launching your campaigns and having loads of influencers going live together, it can also help increase the performance of your campaign, because click-through rate will increase, because you'll be seen in many different places with influencers and then with user acquisition. And so that can also help the performance of your campaign. Key takeaways from that presentation. First, make sure to test, iterate, and optimize in terms of social media, in terms of verticals, in terms of audience demographic, because what you think might perform might not be the truth. And make sure that you strengthen your analysis methodology with all the data that you gather, and that you organize it in a way that you can really take advantage of all the campaigns that you run from month to month. Involve the product teams as much as you can to build new features, the gift links, the gift codes, and to dedicate some resources to help you enhance your campaigns. And if you can, create 360 campaigns involving your ISO managers, your UA managers, even using the likeness of the influencers in your UA campaigns, showcasing the content that is related to the influencer, which is in your app. And that's basically how you turn influencer marketing into a cornerstone of your marketing mix. But before we finish, because we still have a bunch of time, I wanted to let you choose some aspects of the campaign process that you want us to deep dive into. So I'm going to give you a QR code for you to vote for the different steps of the process that you'd like to know more about. And based on the votes, we can go through one or a couple of them. And this will be more, let's say, operational, and how do we actually launch the campaigns. All right, I'm going to wait 1 more minute, but I guess most of you have voted already. All right, measure performance, how surprising. And then set the right price. We have until 11, okay. Okay, so let's go with measure performance first. So, as I mentioned before, to be able to measure the performance and understand the quality of your users, you need to get track traffic. So that's for the quality of the users and their behavior. But as I said, most of the traffic is organic. 80–90% of the traffic is going to be organic. And so that traffic needs to be attributed back to the campaign. In order to do so, the easiest way and the simplest way is to do an organic uplift analysis, right? So first of all, you make sure that when you plan your campaign, all of your influencers will go live together at the same time. So you can be sure that you will generate a big enough spike in your metric to measure the performance. You also need to, when you select that publishing window over, let's say, 2–3 days, make sure that ideally, you don't have anything else impacting your organic, right? So no TV campaign, no podcast, no icon change, no featuring. You're going to tell me, yeah, that's not easily done. Yes, it's true. There are other ways to measure the performance, and it depends obviously on the different apps and games on which you work, but this is the simplest way. So you look at the daily organic installs in the countries that you wanted to target, so let's say the US, for example. You know that the influencer campaign was done within that time frame, so let's say 7 days. You're going to have a look at the training period, so ideally 3 weeks before the campaign period, where supposedly nothing else was impacting your organics. And so you're going to be comparing the daily installs during the campaign period with the average installs during on the same days, which is very important because if you compare Monday versus a Saturday, the installs are not going to be the same. And so basically the uplift is going to be the campaign performance, right? And then you look at the influencer share of track traffic and you apply it to the total organic traffic to estimate the influencer's individual performance in terms of numbers of installs. And then what I usually do is that I look at the track traffic, I look at the behavior of those users in terms of LTV, in terms of retention, etc. And for each of the influencers individually, and I apply this more or less to the organic traffic. Again, this is the simplest way to do it. There are other ways. If your apps gets 5,000 daily organic installs in a certain countries, that means you're going to have to spend a tremendous amount of money to measure the campaign. You can implement, for example, there are companies that are doing an in-game survey, an in-app survey, asking them after they've played the game or the app a bit where did they came from, podcast, TV, etc., which can also help you and correlate that data with your organic uplift analysis, for example. So that's pretty much it. That's the easiest way to do it. I think the second thing was set the right price. Okay. Right. So in influencer marketing, there are two main ways that you can pay the influencers. One is flat fee, which is a fixed amount. And then the other one can be performance-based, which is going to be variable. Let me tell you, nowadays, there's very, very little influencers that are accepting performance-based deals, unfortunately. So how do we offer the right price, right? So the fixed amount, usually what I'm doing is that I'm looking at the views per video on average, and I'm defining on which period, right? So if you want your analysis to be super strict and as accurate as possible, you can look at 7 days only. If you have the means to analyze a campaign on a longer tail, maybe 14 days, 30 days. So I'm looking at the average views per video within a time frame, and I'm gonna apply the CPM that I want to. I'm gonna explain that in a second. For the performance-based deal, you agree on a CPM that you want to pay the influencer on a performance window. So that's really important. Let them know that you want to pay them for 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, 60 days, because otherwise you'll be paying for the views lifetime and nobody wants that. You should add a cap, very important, because you never know if the video goes viral and gets millions of views, you're going to end up paying for loads of views. And sometimes some influencers can also ask for a minimum guarantee. So let's have an example, right? So let's look at Natasha's Kitchen. I wanted to target, let's say, female 25 plus. I'm saying that this is a great channel. So I'm looking at the 7-day views for the past 10 to 20 videos. Obviously, this is not the data that is accessible on YouTube. You only have the views of the total views per video. So you should have access to certain tools, and we can discuss that later. But I'm looking at those 10 to 20 last videos on average. She's making, so I'm not looking at the average, because in the end, if you take 10 videos and one of them made 1 million views, then your average is not accurate. So I'm making 3 scenarios, the lowest, the medium, and the highest. And so in the case of the flat fee, I know that the CPM that I want to pay the influencers, or that the influencer costs in that certain geo and social media is $50, let's say. So YouTube in the US, for channels with female audience above 25 is going to be $50. So $50, she's making, in the medium scenario, 135,000 views. So I'm going to be offering her a 6,750 flat fee. However, it means that if her videos, if the video that I sponsor underperforms and actually only delivers 100,000 views, my CPM is going to go up to $69. Alternatively, if I'm lucky and the videos performs really well, my CPM might go down as low as $29. So it's a bit of a gambling, and it's a matter of trying to understand, okay, what sort of video am I going to sponsor? Did the influencer release similar videos in the past, and how did those perform? Now looking at the performance-based deal, because I know I want to pay, I'll be paying $50 CPM. My fee obviously is going to depend on the videos that are released, and so the deal is going to look like this. I'm offering the influencer $50 CPM on a 7-day performance window, for which I'm going to be paying for the views, with a maximum cap of 15,000. The cap is usually slightly higher than the highest amount that they should be getting. Why? Because I want it to be an incentive for them to deliver the best possible content that might get the best, the highest amount of views. In the end, because I know I'm going to be paying for each views at a certain CPM, I can afford, depends on the scenario, but I can afford to pay maybe more because the CPM is going to remain the same. And the minimum guarantee in that case usually equates the lowest estimation. So in that case, 4,800 as a minimum guarantee. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left. I don't know if you guys have any questions. Yes?
When you're evaluating views on YouTube with the organic uplift, do you apply the same multiplier if you have only the tracking link and FTR calls, or do you have different versions for that?
There would be different conversions. And also, so if you don't have any gift codes or anything, so if you have a gift link, you might end up with a high share of traffic that is going to be tracked. So the multiplier shouldn't be the same. If it's a gift code, people might download still organically, and then it can also help you understand if your multiplier is correct. So yeah. You're welcome. Anyone else?
What tools do you use?
What for?
Everything, your full stack.
Okay.
Can you share?
Yeah, of course. So to find the influencers, I'm not using, I tend not to use tools. Why? Because finding influencers is very time consuming. Contacting them is very time consuming. So I'm working with different agencies that I know are good for YouTube in the US or TikTok in Brazil or stuff like that. So I've got different partners that I brief, and they find me the influencers, and I review the influencers. To review the influencers and check their audience demographic, and also check the views at day 7, day 30, etc., there's a tool that is called Tubular. Tubular is great. I think it has the best data on the market. However, it's very expensive. We're talking about 80,000 per year as a license for just a few users. But once you start doing influencer marketing, you start investing, this is, in my opinion, the best tool and the tool that it's a must-have, because if you don't know the audience of the influencers that you're working with, first of all, you won't be able to choose the right ones, you won't be able to optimize your campaigns, and also you won't be able to set the right price because you won't have the granularity of the views per video at 7 days, 30 days, etc. Yes?
Normally, what's the volume you manage per month in terms of budget and influencers, number of deals per month?
It will depend on the different clients.
And overall,
I would
estimated of each month?
I would say, again, it can really vary, but let's say up to 50 influencers per month on different clients, and budget will go from, I don't know, 100 to 500,000. You're welcome.
How do you navigate the volatility? You said TikTok was on the number 2.
Yeah.
How do you navigate volatility on the organic content? How do you know what to pay due to the algorithm having a huge TikToker can give you 50 views or 5 million views? How do you navigate that?
Yeah.
How do
That's
you plan for a campaign like that?
that's what makes it really hard, especially with TikTok, because as you said, like from one video to another, it can perform drastically different. Especially sometimes when the content is sponsored with a hashtag or something, it tends to perform less than an organic one. So ideally, you try to cut some performance-based deals, but it's not always possible. Otherwise, it's gambling. So it's your gut feeling, and it's also trying to understand, okay, so on TikTok, it might not really be applicable, but for example, on YouTube, you can try to see what sort of videos the influencers are doing, and you see which one tend to perform better or worse than the other ones. But then, in terms of also pricing, how much you can afford to pay to influencers, it's going to depend, obviously, on the market price, the average that the influencers are being paid, but also how much you can offer to pay them if you want to reach profitability. And that's going to depend on, obviously, the LTV of each of the users that you may acquire. And what I usually do is that I make different scenarios of conversion rate to try to estimate, okay, do I have any chances of being profitable with this campaign? How much should I be paying as a CPM to hope to reach profitability? At the beginning, you have to run campaigns and understand, okay, what's the conversion rate for my app? Because you might have benchmark, but it might differ. And on top of that, LTV from influencer traffic might also be different from your organic and obviously from your user acquisition. So the important thing is to launch your first few campaigns, see the data, and then based on that, be able to decide whether or not this can be a good user acquisition channel for your app or your game.
How long is that knowledge gathering period?
It depends on how much you spend and how much you can gather in terms of info. If you spend 10,000 and you work with 10 influencers and you have, I don't know, a total of 100,000 views, that's not going to give you a lot of learnings. If you spend 5 times that, that's definitely going to help you. So it's I guess I would say launch like 3 campaigns with a budget of, I don't know, minimum maybe 20,000, but also it's going to depend on how much traffic you need to generate to be able to measure the performance, because some Apple games need to allocate more than that. So your minimum budget is going to depend really on your app. But at least, 3 campaigns with budget enough, let's say. You're welcome. Okay. If we don't have any other questions, I guess that will be it. Don't hesitate to find me later or now. If you have any other questions, I'll be happy to help. Thank you.